The red wine method, we can say, is a result of circumstance, coincidence, and fortune. I guess you might say fortune in terms of how that evolved with the Dr. Gwen Scott, but that's another story. But the fact is, it does produce this. Later on, it's certainly hope that chemistry will be understood and identified further. But for whatever reason, this particular reaction in chemistry does produce this result. Now, at some time it becomes human, and that's what this next paper is largely about to me. And that is, at what point are you involved in this issue? You can try to dismiss this if you'd like, but to do so you'll have to conduct the test first and tell me that you or the majority of the people that you know and love are not producing this material. The work is saying that essentially everyone is producing it. It just seems to be a matter of degree. This material, when analyzed under the microscope, is identical. It's not a question of being similar. It's essentially identical to the skin filaments that are accepted as having a certain level of reality, I suppose, with the condition. But again, we're talking about internal to the body with someone that shows no symptoms whatsoever. And not only that is the interesting case of a vegetarian, which now leads us to be less likely to consider the diet as being sufficient grounds for eliminating or the onset of this condition. It doesn't exclude it entirely, but it causes us to consider that the diet may not be the distinguishing factor here as much as we might think it would be. I have a little bit of work with a macrobiotic person I referred to that has a little bit of bearing, but personally this surprised me, and on an emotional level, I have a reaction when I see this. And the individual that participated in this also had an emotional reaction, just in terms of their expression on their face. Again, I try to be as fair as I can and let them judge for themselves. But I think they were quite surprised. This particular individual perceived himself to be in quite good health, and there was, let's just say, it was quite a surprise that this material was present internal to the body and unknown prior to this test. So that's the first part of what I wanted to talk about, and we'll have two sessions tonight. This first part where I'll present these photographs to you, and I'll try to take a few questions. And then if we have time, I'll go on to the second session, which has to do with some trials that are being run. Let's go on now. And now it helps me to let me, did everyone get to see the photograph? I mean, I know some of you did, but did most of you get to see the photograph that we're talking about tonight? I know things took a while to load, but that's great. It's looking like the majority of everyone has seen it. Good, because that puts us on common ground. And, we can talk all the science we want. I'm fine with that, okay? And there's plenty to be done in the science world. But what I hope to express in the paper, we'll see how it evolves. I mean, you're getting a preview of what's on my mind. But, at some point, it has to hit you in the gut in terms of what's actually happening here, if this is real, all right? And everything says it's real. I can only do the work and show it, but at what point are you affected by the reality of what you are seeing and what you are learning? Now, let's go on to the second photograph. Hopefully you can see this one. The second photograph. At the same time that this 37-year-old, and by the way, that this particular vegetarian does eat cheese, to dairy products, to my understanding, okay, not meat. That's why diet can always be a factor here. In fact, everything says it is a factor to some degree. We've talked about acidity and alkalinity on other times. But so I'm not at all saying that diet's not likely to be a factor. It's just it's not an exclusionary factor at this time, I think is the point. Now, the second photograph is at the same time as I had this 37-year-old male available to me that was willing to participate, and that's also sort of a little trick, too, along the way. There was an 8-year-old child that was available to me also, an 8-year-old male. And I actually encountered this 8-year-old male child a year ago when he was 7. And the opportunity to participate in this study was offered to him at that time. He did not do so. This year he did, along with the older male. Result of an 8-year-old child that has taken the same test, has conducted the same procedure of 3 minutes apiece with 3 sessions of red wine. And this is my point again, folks, tonight, okay? It's not so much about the science, but this is an 8-year-old kid, okay? Now, if you look in my papers, you will find another paper titled, "And Now Our Children," and that was the first occasion where this came up. This circumstance has been encountered once before, about a year ago or 2 years ago, and all I can say is it's a little bit, we could call it sensitive to have a child be involved in this testing. So the opportunities for a child participating willingly are sort of rare. It's a little bit difficult. There's a sensitivity issue there, I think, that has to be dealt with. And but this time the child was willing, and this is what we have. And so what this tells us, okay? You know, remember I said the title of this tonight, if I had it, I don't know what the title of the paper is going to be yet, but the title for tonight is "The Extent of the Problem." Okay? That's the title for tonight. At what point are you going to be involved? This is my question. Let's go on. The next photograph, and I assume that comes into the center. I'm hoping it comes into the center of your screen. This is what I would call a typical example of a culture growth that I'm involved in now. And this culture growth is a direct result of the filaments that I just showed you on the earlier photographs. Okay? As a matter of fact, if you look in the center of that, you see this little dark spot in the center. That actually is a portion of a dental sample. This particular one is in white wine. It has been learned over the last 6 months or so that white wine is perfectly suitable for growing this particular culture, and has the advantages of being easier to analyze under the microscope because of the clear solution. But both can be used. Briefly, I'll state that the culture growth has 4 primary stages. I've mentioned this in the past, but there's 4 primary stages. You can't see all of them here, but you can see an important, a very good representation of the filament growth that eventually emerges. And if you notice there, do you see how it's bounded by a whitish color, W-I-T-I, or W-H-I-T-E, a whitish color? That is the earliest stage of the filament growth that occurs. It doesn't last very long, but it would be equivalent to, like on ferns, what they call fiddleheads, where you have the young growth. It's that stage. It is everything that appears. It's young, rapid growth, but it doesn't actually last very long because with respect to the filaments alone, let me back up a little bit. There's 4 main stages of growth that I see, the